Did I do it the right way? Yeah.
Right. Welcome to Burnt Out Perfectionist. My name is Sarah.
My name is Eve.
I laughed after. I was like, was I supposed to say it at the end? So this is the final episode that we're recording for the year. Ironically, this will be the second to last episode. So we've already gone through one, so be prepared for giggles and nonchalantness.
Also, I'm a bit peckish, so if I randomly start talking about food, that's why.
I know. I also have not eaten lunch, and it is 1:38 in the afternoon. I have very large breakfast burrito.
I'm basically like living the carnivore life. I had 3 sausages this morning, and then I'm gonna dive into some pepperoni sticks and some Costco French fries and gravy after. It's gonna be great.
Thank you, Napoleon Dynamite, for showing up.
That's all I thought of.
So, for the final thing that we have seen trending everywhere, all of the other stuff. So we talked about the anti-consumerism. How the fuck did I word it in the underconsumption core was like one of the last ones that we were talking about. So this one is going to be a no spend months or years. Some people are doing it in all different aspects. So the new trendy way to save and simplify your life.
So I had sent you this a while ago, and I was like, people make these rules some people are doing like no spend 2025 or like no spend January. I'm sorry. Side note, can we stop restarting things in January? Because as a January baby, I just want to eat my dairy and my gluten and not feel bad.
And I would just like to state that in Evenized mind, the world runs from September to September.
Honestly, too, I feel like everything resets. New season, reset.
Yeah.
But a no spend year is essentially where people are being more mindful with their spending. They come up with these rules. Some people are more extreme than others. It can be like not purchasing any new clothing for the whole year, no purchasing of
like accessories.
Yeah.
So like anything like in the fashion realm, basically.
Give me 1 second. I realized screw you. No. So basically, a no spend year is when people make up rules. Some more extreme than others, and it could be like no spending on new clothing, no spending on new accessories, or things like that. So just like being more conscious of the ways that your money's going out.
Mm-hmm. They just and they make, like you said, these lists. Like I've seen someone who's made like the list where it's like extremely specific. She was like, I made the rules almost sound too definitive or like vague. So she was like, no more buying of shoes. But if I wear out my sneakers and they are completely worn out, then instead of just, hurting your entire body through life, then I'm allowed to buy myself one new pair of sneakers and like cycle out the ones that she used outside to like she's going to buy new ones for like the gym or something. So it's like a lot of the videos too are like people, and then they'll have like their notes app open behind them, and they've like written out all these like very specific things, like use all your makeup up and do the other thing, which is something that we mentioned in the underconsumption core thing. I just want to make sure, like, within reason, I understand using out makeup, but please remember that there is like bacteria and there's other things that build up. You can wipe off your makeup palettes and everything, but there are expiration dates once opening. So
I think also there's a difference between like no spending and mindful spending.
Yeah.
I saw quite a few that people were like, I'm not gonna buy any like sugars from the store.
Oh my God, this again.
Or I'm not gonna eat food out at all.
I know, and I'm like, so if somebody has a birthday dinner, you're not gonna attend?
That, but also there is some days where my brain, I forgot to take out meat. I look in the pantry and I'm like, I swear, if anything, is nothing speaking to me. And I just want a quarter pounder with cheese from McDonald's.
Yeah.
And I will get it.
That's the whole thing. Is like, there's the whole thing about like restricting. I feel like it's always like one of two ways. It's like extreme restricting, and then it's like, fuck it and do whatever you want to do with your life.
I find that a lot of the ones that I've seen were regarding clothing and accessories.
Yeah, a lot of it was, I think, because a lot of people really ramped up their spending in like 2020, and you get fed a lot of ads, right? Like there's TikTok Shop. You can basically like click somebody's link in a fucking video and buy something off their Amazon storefront. Like stuff like that. So it's a lot easier to click and buy. And I think a lot of it was triggered by that Netflix documentary too about spending and how like spend cycles work and stuff like that too. And how there used to only be like seasons and now it's like every 2 weeks there's something new that's being pushed out and not really. Yeah. My favorite was I saw somebody who was like, I'm gonna buy something of quality and then have it so it lasts. Well, even as we talked about in the last video, the quality actually isn't like really a thing anymore for a lot of brands. It's very subjective based on the brand. And even if they state that's what they stand for, like we've watched large brands like totally drop off in the quality realm, but still charge the same amount.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of people will do this to help with like their debt.
Yeah.
And a lot of their debt is regarding like student loans,
Which is technically good debt because it's something that benefits you.
and like credit card debt and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
I find that when a lot of them are focused on like specific things, like if I had a no spend year and I put I'm not gonna buy jewelry.
When do you buy jewelry?
When would that apply to me?
Yeah.
Really never, because I don't buy jewelry. I don't wear jewelry, really ever. Or if I was like, oh, I'm gonna not allow myself to buy fragrant creams. I'm allergic to all of them, so there's no like, there's putting it out there just to check it off the list
Yeah.
versus like actually looking internally and being like, okay, I have a problem. I need to stop buying Costco socks.
Oh, yeah. Or like going through things like stop buying socks, find socks that you like and stick to them.
Exactly. There's also a difference between trialing things to find those main things. Like, I purchased a couple of pairs of slippers, and the ones that I have right now I love, but also they don't keep my feet super warm.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, these kind of smell. I need to buy a new pair. I probably might have failed to realize that I didn't realize that people were buying like 6 pairs of slippers and throwing them in their closet and then pulling out a new pair. And I was like, what?
Oh, yeah. Like when they go on sale.
Like, to an extent, yeah. Sometimes I'm like, oh, mine are starting on the downhill, so I'll grab one pair as a backup.
I'm a chronic, like, oh, this is going downhill. I should look for something in that either like heavily researching and looking at all the things that I want or things that I feel need and meet all those needs and then like putting in the cart, but then putting it for save it to later, completely forgetting. And then like, if we're talking about slippers, the slipper falls apart or the slipper stinks so bad that Eva's like, this is going in the trash. No one wants to be around you. These smell. Like, I love you. These smell. So yeah, like a lot of people do it, like you said, financial freedom, simplification. So that way it's like you have less clutter, less shit in your house. Um, and my favorite thing though, like we talked about in the last video, not to keep referencing it, is like when people are like, under consumption core, I'm gonna get rid of everything in my house and then rebuy everything that I need and then go from there. And I'm like, that's not the way it works. Like it's supposed to be like using up things. Some people are doing it for like environmental concerns, so that way they're not like contributing to, like garbage. We don't have plastics and stuff like that in Canada anymore. They were banned. So we don't have like plastic straws or bags. And so a lot of stuff like that we no longer contribute to. Some people do it for like personal growth. Like, you're like a teenager with money and you live with your parents. You don't have to pay for anything else. So you're like, woohoo, money. Then you move out on your own, you're in your 20s and you're like, I'm going to go get wasted and I'm going to do all this other stuff and buy all these things that I want when they come out, do all these other things. And then you're like, okay, now what? Like, I have the things. Like, what do I do? Where do I go from there? And you kind of realize what works for you, what doesn't work for you, how you're not needing the next thing or something like that. And then other things are some people just do it to be trendy. Let's just be honest.
I find too, and like I think this episode was in our first season, the sobriety one.
Yes.
I find it really interesting because a lot of the no spend ones I have don't say not spending money on alcohol.
I know they'll say not like not eating out or something. And I was like, does that mean I commented on one of them, like, when you state not eating out, does that mean like if you go out to hang out with your friends at like a club or a bar or something that you're also not buying alcohol? So far, no one has answered me.
And like that's not shaming people who drink, but I just find it interesting because the people will be like, oh, I want to do this so I can save money and go on trips.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And they're like, oh, I had a really hard day. I'm gonna like drink
Milk
a
it
bottle of wine. And I'm like, okay. But like, could we do other things? Or people will be like, I'm gonna cancel. The one that I keep saying is, I'm gonna cancel all my subscriptions and I'm going back to like
DVDs?
yes,
Yeah, I'm gonna go to Value Village. I'm on a no spend month, week, period, whatever. And I'm going to cancel all my subscription services. And then I'm going to go to the thrift stores and rebuy everything in VHS or DVD that I used to watch when, like when I was a kid or stuff like that. I know some people are doing it because it has been proven that a lot of the content as for like kids is very like overwhelming and overstimulating. And if you actually get your kid to watch like old content, it's less like that. So a lot of kids aren't doing it as per like screens and stuff too. I mean, I'm always like, hey, you want to watch this old movie that I used to watch when I was a kid? My kid's like, yeah, sure. But I know what you mean. There's a lot of things, but then I see a lot of things that like counter it. And I'm like, oh, like I wonder how they came to that conclusion. Like, were they just finding that they were like binging, sitting and watching stuff? Did they feel that they weren't like actually utilizing all of those subscription services? Were they annoyed like me? Like the prices kept going up and they were like, fuck you, I'm going to go get stuff again. And that involves because to me, when I saw stuff like that, I'm like, well, that goes back to the whole like simplification part where they're like, oh, I'm going to simplify my life. I'm going to get these things. But then I'm like, but the simplification part of it as well is like the decluttering process. And like DVDs take up room, VHS take up room. Or like buying a VHS player and a DVD player now, they're fucking expensive. You used to buy them for like $20.
and I think that's sort of like if obviously if you're doing it for the like removing
Like the kid
subscriptions
stimulation
and stuff,
things. Yeah.
great. But I find like it's that restriction thing that I always like giggle at. Like there's this TikToker that I watch and she's bought probably 10 carry-on backpacks to try. And then she was like, I'm doing a no spend year. And I was like,
How much did you spend on those backpacks?
yeah, because I don't know if she returns them. But I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That's great. But like, what happened to the other ones? Like, I remember she had this university bag, and she goes, "This is the best bag ever," but it has my university on it. And I commented, I'm like, just put a patch on it.
Yeah.
Like, why are you needing to replace it? Just put a patch on it.
Or people looking for like over complicated things that involve all this stuff when you literally just need a canvas tote bag.
That makes me laugh. Also, I'd like to call Sarah out for a minute. Every time you go, your face was every time she needs to take something home from my house, she doesn't take the plastic one. She takes a canvas tote.
I haven't taken one in a super long time.
Really?
Seriously, I have nothing in my house. So I used to always take well, and then it would either be stuff that was left behind or stuff that was purchased or things where they were like, oh, your kid would love this or I got this for you, which is great. And I'm super grateful. And then they put inside those reusable plastic bags. I did not know that they didn't want me to return them. So I literally kept them all in like a bag of bags and then showed up one day and literally dropped it down. They had done like going through the house, purging, getting rid of stuff, going through things. And here I come with 20 reusable bags.
Yeah.
And he was like, ah, I wanted to replace them all with canvas or like ones that were cuter because those ones are ugly and I bought them or they're shitty. No, I mean, they were shitty.
It was mainly because they started deteriorating.
Yeah.
I left all the bags. They were cute. But so obviously we walk everywhere and the canvas totes don't rip my hands when I walk. And so I was waiting for them to break. And so what I would do is I would collect the plasticky ones and I would donate them to the thrift store.
Oh, yeah. When you take all your donations, you drop them off, which is so funny now because actually the one where I live has a whole box of them at the front. And they're like, please take, at first it was like pay $1 and get one. And now it's like, please take the reusable bags.
Yeah, so like the canvas totes I can like fold up. I can put like 6 in a bag. That's great. Like you have a market tote and you put the other ones in it. I just keep on bringing them back. I was like, no.
She's like, stop doing that. I think a big thing is why it's trending and stuff like that is so like I've seen a very large shift. So if you look at, I know like it's a whole generational thing and stuff, but like when you look at it, there was like a lot of boomers grew up with having like quality products. They only buy certain things, the stuff that they need. These are just general things that I've seen. It was more in like the 80s and 90s where kids were growing up, but there was a lot of stuff being pushed, like get the latest and greatest, newest thing, get this. There was a lot more of that, probably because like that's when chain stores, franchises, stuff like that kind of like blew up more, and that was more of the targeted marketing. And then you shift into spaces like social media where you have someone that you were watching them do a vlog and now they're telling you that the product that changed their life is X, Y, and Z. And there's a lot of stuff that came out there. Then we have folks who've never been on social media, and then folks who came in and only knew what social media was since a very young age, which is like Eve's Gen Z folks. And mine was like the bridging the gap version where we're like, oh, shiny new thing. What is that? Or those Facebook ads, the Instagram ads that seem to get a lot of people around my age, which I don't get a lot of those. I just skip them. But I feel like it's like easing, well, I know the financial markets in general, especially within Canada, um, is leaning more towards like minimalism, not even just color, but just like less possessions, less things to manage, less things that, use energy, not even just for the environment, but mainly for like, because energy bills are high. Or like I love this word, frugality on platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Just kind of, you're seeing a lot more people who are like, I've seen a lot more influencers who are being honest, being like, I love that I get PR. I appreciate that I get PR. And I know I'm very privileged that I get it, but I actually like, you'll notice that I'm not going to be doing these hauls and stuff because I actually don't use all this stuff, or going through it. Like I was watching one of Laura's videos and she's like, this is great. Like I'm so grateful, but I'm about to literally pick out the 3 things that I use because I use the same shit all the time. And I don't deviate because I like the same stuff. And she's like, I'm going to take the rest of it. Some of them have PR closets or they immediately donate to like a women's shelter or something like that. So you're even watching the folks who were originally kind of like promoting or showing these like hauls or pushing content and stuff like that, and you're watching them even change their habits too. So I think that says a lot for hopefully how the world will move forward. I mean, things could just fucking spin around and change again. My issue is I don't like restrictions. Yeah. When it comes to stuff. Because there was a lot of like food restrictions and stuff like that that came out, especially in the early 2000s. Like a lot of people had eating issues and stuff. And then there's like restrictions when it comes to companies on like what sizes they use, like going back to that whole thing. And even just like restrictions in general. Like what happens if you do like need a new thing and you're like, well, I can't do that. And then you end up getting it and then you end up shitting on yourself. Like I feel like there's a lot of back and forth when it comes to like definitive rules and everything. You can be like, hey, like I like Starbucks, but I'm going to get Starbucks once or twice a month instead of getting Starbucks every single day. And that whole thing, it's not really going to change your life, to be totally honest. Like, it's not like that's going to be a mass amount of savings unless, you're buying like a fucking $10, you're spending $20 a day or something. That could be a significant change. But if you're buying like their standard Pike place and you're spending a couple bucks on coffee, like you're not going to see a huge increase when it comes to that. But, maybe that'll encourage you to like learn a new skill or use that coffee maker that sits on your counter, or can I go from there?
I was really called out right now.
What? I use your coffee. You guys used it the last week. It's been great. I come in,
Oh, yeah.
have a little cup of coffee. It's still warm.
I need to make coffee probably in the afternoon. I when I look at like spend years with the restrictions and stuff,
Yeah.
I feel like instead of taking it as like a negative restriction, flip it and being like, so say if you did like an overview of your year and you were like, man, I spent, and I've seen like people like do their Uber check around and stuff, and they're like, I spent $1,300 on Uber Eats. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to eat out anymore.
Yeah, it's like, bam, right away.
Restriction.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, you know what? I would love to know how to make authentic Mexican food. I'm going to work towards that.
Yeah.
Or I want to learn how to make Italian food. I told you at the beginning, I'm hungry. This is why I'm talking about food. So, doing those types of skills and working towards that, that's why we're more into like the vision boards and stuff like that. Because if Sarah came to me and she was like, well, I don't want any more things in my house. I'm not going to buy anything anymore. I'd look at her and be like, bye. I was like, is there a reason for this? And we've discussed this too with, so I think with like organization of like no spend years.
Yeah.
There is a YouTuber that we watched that was talking about wanting to reorganize her house. And I was like, oh, well, she should probably have one for like ADHD. And as soon as I saw the organization that the organizer had given, I was like, that's not going to work for her because she's got ADHD.
Also, the amount of floor space and empty shelving that it allowed for doom piles, I was like, oh, that ain't gonna work.
So it's also recognizing that like just because somebody else wants to do it doesn't mean like, so people are like, I want to go vegan or I want to go vegetarian.
Yeah.
I'm cutting everything out, have this restriction. If you know you're not a restriction person, then don't do it.
Especially if you know that it's not like that you can't stick to something. And that's what I hate is like that notion of like you failed. And it's not, it didn't work for you. So you need to rework it. If you have been told, as an example from like a doctor, you need to cut salt out and you're trying your best, but you're not finding alternatives to change that. So not like it's a no salt alternative, like other flavors and stuff like that that you can add to it. Because clearly like with salt, you're not just craving the salt at times, it's a flavor enhancer. So maybe you need to swap it to something else. Like it's allowing for those extra swaps. And my favorite thing is like that whole like they were like, I'm gonna reset because I'm like overspending after holidays or big purchases or whatever. And it's like people will have it where they're like, oh, I'm gonna do a full reset of like my house or whatever, or this is how I'm gonna organize it. And like you said, that was the perfect example of like, I love that she wanted to take the time to like get her house. She has the budget. She's talked about it for years, getting this organizer and doing that. But like getting one who understands you, getting one who understands your life. So another YouTuber that I watch, she's a mom. I had talked about her all the time. She's now that practical mom she was before, but first coffee. And when she worked with an organizer, she explained the whole process. So I don't know with this other YouTuber that we're talking about if this process was just cut out because maybe they thought it would be boring or something. But there was additional context that was in there. So the organizer, she worked strictly with a virtual organizer. She gave all the dimensions and everything of all the stuff that was in her kitchen. And then, so that way they could figure out like containers and stuff like that. And she had to fill out this like insane questionnaire of like, what's an everyday look like? Or it wasn't even like vague. Some of them were like, what are things that you store? What are things that you have as overstock? Like, and like going through all this, like, what do you want your kids to have access to? What do you not want your kids to have access to? What's something you use on a daily basis? What's something that you don't use that much? Like going through all the things. And it's like, if something is in a solid container, are you less likely to actually pull it out? Like just see it as nothing? Or do you need clear containers so that way you can recognize, be like, oh yeah, that's up here and pull it out? And I felt like that was more of like a consultative basis through that. And then the person went through and said, here's all the containers. You can buy all these containers on Amazon. And then she's American. So it was like, here's all the ones that you can buy at the Container Store. And they were like, whichever way you want to go about it. So because it was a video, because she was basing it off of like an entire YouTube video, and obviously like the monetization and stuff like that will pay for it. She's like, I actually bought all the exact stuff that she recommended. And she bought it off Amazon because she lives in a smaller town. The Container Store is a while away. And she waited till everything was in and then went through, and the person gave her like these specified plans. And she went through, because it was virtual, and physically did this and went through the things and put the containers in and followed the map and went through. And I think that's like a great way of doing it. Because like, honestly, if I had someone come in my house and just like organize it, that's awesome. Someone goes through my shit, goes through it. But what happens if they get rid of something that I actually want to keep? Or what happens if they organize and push it away and I don't know where anything is in my house, even though it's completely organized?
Yeah.
That's kind of like the big thing for me. I've seen another one. There's it's a Canadian content creator. It's called like Simple. Like she works with a bunch of different people who like live in our province or in Canada in general. And she gets everybody to like lay things out and they go through the house like one at a time. So it's not just like this big like random go through. And then she gives like tips like, hey, what I suggest to people, I think I said this in one of the other ones, but what she suggests to people is like, if you have kids, I'm going to say this because I'm a mom and it's the best example I can give. You take all that wrapping paper for the holidays. You take all the books, all the shirts, if you know that they're going to fit the next year, or you guess that they're going to fit the next year. Pajamas. You take all that stuff and you pack it all together. So that way, when Christmas comes out, as an example, it's Christmas. Everything is there. You've got the stuffies, you've got the decor, you've got everything that you need for Christmas, all the way down to books. So that way it's not sitting out, taking up space. You're not finding an extra space to put it. It's all in one place. And I was like, that's really great. Downfall was I forgot that I did that. And then I bought more wrapping paper last year. And then I found the extra box of decorations because we hadn't gone through all the stuff. And now I have like 6 or 7 rolls of Christmas wrapping paper.
I like with the no spend too. I think that there's a difference between being no spend and like some people are like, oh, I'm not gonna do that because that costs money.
Yeah.
And it's like you can do no spend of like, oh, I'm gonna be better at like meal prepping or like I said before, or uh, meal prepping or getting up in the morning and having a better routine. Because then it's like it'd be better to like get up and make the coffee versus going and getting coffee every day. So what tools do I need in order to do that? Most of the time you have the tools.
You just don't want to do it.
You just don't want to do it. And so like I love my good old brew later button.
Yeah.
I do it at 11 p.m. the night before. I wake up and the coffee's made.
Yeah.
Constantly. Just don't have to deal with that. But I did have to take the step to do that.
Yeah.
If people are like, oh, I really want to like go through my house and stop like collecting things. And like I found that a lot of people when they're collecting items, there's 2 types of people. There's the clothing and there's the like paper.
Yeah.
I am not a clothing collector. I am not a purse collector, not a shoe collector. None of those. Not really. There's a fresh journal. I'm gonna have it. It's okay. I have too many of them and it makes me happy. But I'm also not gonna go, oh, well, I'm not gonna buy journals for the entire year. No. I'm gonna go, man, I have empty journals. I'm going to use them this year. I want to make it a point to use them for different things.
Well, and that's exactly it, right? Like there's certain things that you can always, or you can reuse it with a different purpose.
Yeah.
Like we keep all of our organization stuff. If we reorganize something, we will reuse it. And sometimes they'll get a message from me, hey, do you have something that would like fit this? Or I'll message her. And it'll be like, okay, perfect. Like I was like, oh, I think for the new like school year, I want to get like one of those 3 wall dividers or whatever. So that way my daughter can put her reading books in one place. She has like a drop off spot for that upstairs and downstairs because you never know where everything will come out. And, put that stuff there. So that way it's not like run around looking for library books or you're running around looking for the reading log thing or anything like that. And I want to have a spot where it's right there. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go look for one. And Eve's like, we have one outside. You can just paint it a different color. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah. So we went outside, got it, took it home, mounted it to the side of her desk. And we use it when she takes stuff downstairs. And it works great. It's a great system. But we reuse something that was already here. And that's the whole thing is you could always just like reach out. And the moms group that I'm into, we'll have a bunch of people who be like, my kid has not used X, Y, and Z. Does anybody else want this? It's like unused. Like before I put this on Facebook Marketplace. And you can give stuff away or you can sell stuff. Like it's totally fine. But just like understanding what's actually needed. Like if you haven't touched something in a while, maybe you don't need that in your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also not like people will always do the extremes with hobbies that we've talked before of like, oh, I want to read more. I'm going to buy a Kindle. If you haven't read
No.
in years, maybe start with a book.
My favorite though is my default to buying anything like that is a ton of people are buying Kindles obviously during COVID, like because they didn't want to go out or there was restrictions, stuff like that. And they were buying them and people are going out and dropping like Kindles are like $200 or more. Like a lot of them are. And they're going out and getting them. My immediate reaction was, I'm going to go on Facebook Marketplace and you find tons of Kindles and people just want to get rid of them. Some people want the original amount that they paid and other people, like I paid $60 for mine or something. And the guy was like, yeah, I got it. Just like wasn't my jam. And you know what? I used mine for a while pretty consistently. And then I kind of dropped off, but that's fine. 'Cause I only spent $60 on it. I still have it. I still update it. And if it's like, would you like to have whatever? Sometimes I'll just get the books because I figured out how to like actually update and hack mine. So that way it makes everything into an audiobook.
And a lot of those things, it's like, it's recognizing what you're spending. If you have 50 white sweaters, don't buy another one.
Yeah, maybe go through them and just pick the white sweater that you need.
Or dye them different colors.
Or dye them, yeah, especially if it's a white sweater.
Yeah.
Or dye them different colors. Or if that sweater that you have that's black that you absolutely love is like covered in pills, get the freaking shaver thing. If you've done that too many times, maybe consider getting a new one. Like,
also, just a heads up, no matter what anybody says, it is physically impossible to not spend money for an entire year.
yeah, and that's the whole thing is like, so the general rules, which makes me laugh because a lot of these things that people were like cutting off, I wouldn't spend money on them anyway. So it's like your basics that you're going to want to spend money on is food, bills, transportation. Well, for bills, for everybody, that's variable. A bill could be a subscription service, and other people could see that as, no, you don't want to have that because it's a no spend year. Or like things that were what's not allowed, impulse buys. I was like, up to like what, like, I'm sorry, you're standing in line or you're at the dollar store and you're like, oh my God, I want this thing that's $1.50. You're going to be like, no, I'm on a no spend year. And then there's luxury or non-essential items, new clothes, gadgets, or entertainment. A luxury? What budget? Why budget? No. And then saving versus spending. So focusing on essentials is a way to save on things like groceries and utilities. You want to bet that because you used to buy food all the time, that you're not going to buy the prepackaged meal that costs more, or even it's roughly the same amount, or you're not going to buy whatever. Like, I think a big thing is when you go out to eat food too, if there's an easy way, this is what my friend Jen and I do, and we talk about this all the time. My husband does this too. We'll go, and there's a place called Spaghetti Factory. So you can go to Spaghetti Factory, get your meal, which for me, their portions are massive. So I'll eat one half and I'll eat the other half the next day for lunch. That's 2 meals right there. And the average cost of their stuff is like $20. So that's $10 a meal. But also, you can get things upsized to like factory size. And that will literally cover my husband sometimes for 2 to 3 meals. And that's like $10, $11. Like it ends up working out to like something lower. And you know what? We didn't have to use the energy. We didn't have to make it. So if you're going to eat out, how about instead of like not restricting yourself to eating out because that may restrict you like socially or whatever, why don't you look at just like more efficient ways? Like maybe you don't need the $20 cocktail. Maybe you don't need the most expensive thing on the menu. Maybe you can get something that you can eat over the next 1 or 2 meals. So that way you don't have to think ahead. Like do it more efficiently and effectively than just like being like, nope.
Exactly.
Or have water instead of having another drink.
Yes. We're good in the head.
We're all good in the hood. I think the main thing is just to try to figure out, like, is it achievable for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also just like comparison is like the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
And when in doubt, like, and I've said this to Sarah in the past, like, my priorities might be different than her priorities. My priorities of spending money could consist of, I want seasonal sheets.
Yeah.
Might not be priority. But to me, I'm like, well, I want nice sheets. Well, I want to focus on having a better sleep. I want to focus on eating better. So I'm going to work towards those goals instead of being like, I'm not spending money.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, if you think this is achievable for you, if you think this is something that would help you and would not harm you in the way of like, if you can't eat out, you just don't eat at all, or you just eat popcorn. I used to do that when I lived alone.
I think, like, also the concept of eating out is like, there's a lot of different like tiers, I would consider.
100%.
There's like getting your morning coffee every day from a coffee shop. That brings you a lot of joy, and you're like, well, I don't want to use my coffee machine. I don't feel like I need that. If it limits you, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe get like a membership or a punch card.
Yeah.
Then there's like the buying lunch all the time. Then there's buying dinner. Like there's such a variety of like different ways that you can like work on your spending that is not like, I'm not going to, like, a lot of people don't like grocery shopping.
Oh, yeah, no.
And then it's like, oh, well, I'm going to restrict myself because I'm only going to eat salads. And I'm only going to eat this one. I'm sorry, to the people who can eat the same food every day, I try. It doesn't work.
I used to be able to do stuff like that. Like when I was younger, I'd go through it and then I'd get the ick and stop and then find something else that I really wanted to eat. Or I'd have like the same core things and like rotate them in and out. And I think that's the big thing. As long as it's helping you and not harming you, as long as you're not like shitting on yourself. Because I've seen a lot of people who are like, I was going to do a no spend, and then I ended up doing this. It's like, I ended up going on this trip to Disneyland with like my family, and then I bought like ears or I bought something else. And I was like, why are you shitting on yourself? Like, how many times do you go to Disneyland? Is it all the time? Like, that was an opportunity that was either offered to you, like, say maybe you didn't have to pay for the trip, but you decided to buy something along the way. Like, I think when it comes to it, everything should be flexible, and flexibility doesn't mean that you're not doing it right or you're not doing, like, you shouldn't shame yourself for adjusting things along the way. It doesn't make you a failure and all that other stuff. Like, striking a balance between, like, those levels and everything, or like, why you're doing it. Are you doing it for like sustainability? And can you sustain this like long term as a person? Or are you doing this as like a short term challenge? Are you trying to change habits overall? And like you said, like, are you setting yourself up for success? Like, if you don't want to eat out all the time, are you figuring out meal planning? Or are you figuring out groceries? Maybe you don't go to the grocery store. Or are you wanting to do it where you make meals based off of what you see in the flyer versus like what you want to eat? Or there's like so many different ways to do it. And there's a lot of people who always do that harsh line on January 1st of things. And it works for some folks. It doesn't work for a lot of people though. And like statistically, it shows that.
Well, also, it's the worst time to start something. Like, people are always like, oh, I'm going to start fresh in January. If you're like, I want to get into running in January, and I'm speaking in a Canadian perspective.
Yes.
January, which, like, in British Columbia, it is usually around -15. And you've gone, you know what? I'm going to learn how to run. I want to run outside. I want to enjoy nature in -15-degree weather. Like, buddy, start that when, like, maybe start walking around your house, but going for a walk around your place.
Yeah.
Going for walks around the market, being more conscious about, like, how many steps you're doing or, like, moving your body.
Mm-hmm.
If someone walked up to me and said, I'd pay you $1 million to go for a run in -15 weather, I would go, I'm very sorry. Please donate that to charity. I will not.
I'd be like, can I get a front so that way I can have all the proper stuff to have? Because, like, if you don't have the right sneakers, like, running is the best example. If you don't have the best sneakers, you don't have actually, like, stuff that works well for your body, you could, like, really fuck yourself up for the rest of your life.
That's what also gets me, is all of these, like, free activities of, like, no-spend activities of, like, learning how to run. If you've never been a runner your whole life, it's really important to wear proper shoes in general, like foot health. And I don't work with a podiatrist, but like foot health is extremely important for your overall joint health, as well as like if, for instance, we wear like crew neck sweaters and leggings.
Yeah.
They're not like athletic leggings, but we don't have like thermal layers.
Oh, yeah, no.
The winter coat that I have weighs about 10 pounds. So if we're doing a weighted run, sure.
Yeah.
But I'm not setting myself up for success. Also, I've never had an interest in running. So if I've never had an interest in like doing these rules, such as clothing stuff, why am I gonna
Oh, my favorite is that I'm going to run 10 miles in a day. And instead of being like, I'll run like half a mile, quarter mile if you've never run something. And then they don't slowly work their way up. They're like, oh, this is horrible. It was horrible for the first like 3 months, but I pushed through and I ran 10 miles. Why'd you make it horrible? Why'd you make it easy?
even like little rewards? Like if people are wanting to do like a no spend year for a year, obviously, no spend year for a year, have like almost like a little reward every month. So if like January you do the first one, then you're like, oh, I'm gonna go get a fancy drink. Like I know some people will do it so that they can appreciate the like above essential things.
That was like when we started going to the gym, and I was like, I'm going to use the stuff that I have, like the leggings and the outfits and the shoes and stuff that I already have. and I'm going to use them until I wear them out, as long as I'm consistently going before I upgrade and buy anything else. And by upgrade, it doesn't mean I'm going to go out and buy Lululemons for $120 because, contrary to popular belief, I don't like their clothes. They do not work for me. They did not work for me when I was a beanpole. They do not work for me now. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll look at paying more than the $20 I do at Costco if I feel the need. Like, if I find that maybe these aren't working for me, I need higher waisted ones. I need ones that reduce friction or something. Or that the whole thing is we did it for a year. And I was like, I need to get new shoes. And Eva's like, hey, I was actually going to talk to you about that because they've noticed a significant like decrease in the amount of like bounce and like the way that the shoe was structured. And that's the whole thing, is like making sure you have the foundation of things in order to do it. Because things that can be free, even if you're doing walking, you want to make sure you have the right footwear. Like if you don't have boots that have grip, like where we live, but you want to go for walks, cool. You might have all the other stuff, then get those boots. Like be safe. That's the whole thing, is like there's a lot of people who look up running and then they're like, well, I stopped running because like somebody came at me. Unfortunately, we're both women and we understand that there's a lot of random shit that'll happen to us, and they'll happen to other people as well who are part of different groups and stuff. And sometimes you have to do that extra research to figure out like where's the best place, where's it convenient, because if you're driving 15 to 20 minutes to go somewhere, most likely you may take a detour.
Yeah. Also, like, it is okay to have incentives to do stuff,
Yeah.
but like, make sure that you don't already have the incentive. Because I know people buy those really large water bottles.
Oh my God. And then the office bathroom is used so much for like the first half of January or to the end of January. And it's just like there's never a stall open. Everybody has to pee. You're filling this thing up all the time. And yeah, your body changes and you like build like adaptation and figure out how much your body actually needs. But flooding your body with all that stuff right away, like all you're going to do is piss. And like don't plan to do a bunch of other things because you're going to have to like just start that one habit.
My God, it's like people are like, I'm going to drink 80 ounces of water, but I'm also going to go into hot yoga.
Yeah.
Girl, you just walking up for a cramp.
Oh, well, and that's it too, right? So, and then like cramps. So making sure that you have some type of like electrolyte, or you know what to eat before, what you know your body needs before you like work out or whatever, and what your body needs afterwards. Because like I can't work out on an empty stomach or I will pass out. And nor can afterwards. Like I need to eat. And there needs to be something, and it needs to be riddled with protein. And some people don't need that. They can just skip from here to there and it's fine. There's a lot of other like alternatives that you can do for what usually most people use like spending for. So like cutting unnecessary subscriptions, like look and see like what people actually use, not just streaming platforms but like apps, like any type of that. Like there's a app out there that can help you find all the subscriptions that you have, and some people like apparently don't know what subscriptions they have sometimes. I just, if I do one of those free trials and it's like, it'll automatically do this, I sign up for the free trial and then I hit cancel. So that way it just automatically goes. But I have an Apple phone. So I feel like I know it's easy for me to see all my subscriptions. Like turning off lights, like adjusting thermostat settings, like saving money in those ways, shopping smarter, looking for coupons, discount sites, reading flyers, making a list before you go to the store, like meal prepping, working with a friend, sharing recipes, like going on Pinterest.
I know this sounds really bad, but if you think about it, like, this is what, like, our parents did
Yeah.
growing up because there wasn't technology. And I think a lot of people now are seeing technology not as much of an asset, but as a, like, crutch.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, we're going to do this. Oh, that's away from your phones. You're away from this. Oh, well, I want to do this. And obviously, we do a lot of things digitally, but a lot of people are being like, you know what? I spent a lot of time watching TV and on my phone and kind of like went through a hole. And like, that's okay.
Yeah.
I doom scroll.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to the club.
But also, it's good to take that time to be like, oh, where did the TikTok? Do you remember? Hopefully you remember those like lovely people that were like, "Hi, you've been scrolling for a while."
Oh, I turned that off. That's an option.
You could turn that off.
So you can turn it off. So before, during COVID, they did it actively.
Yeah.
And then there were so many complaints from like the North American market that they don't have it so it automatically like pops up and tells you to get off anymore. And you have to be able to like set it where you're like, I don't want to be on it more than this much per day. And then it'll have the reminder comes up and then one of those things will come up.
See, like the one that was, I like the little video that would pop up that was,
Is that a guy who was always like, bam, with his hand?
yeah,
I know, I thought it was funny. And I was
that scrolling.
it was, yeah, like the whole point is when it comes to social media is it's literally just marketing, 100% marketing. It was originally proposed for communication, all the other stuff, but it's 100% used for marketing. And that's totally fine. There's small businesses out there that may not have had a chance if they didn't have stuff like that. But also like watching things like that, but also totally cutting it off is like a whole other thing too, because then you might be restricting yourself when it comes to like apply for jobs, because technically like LinkedIn is social media, or seeing those additional opportunities, or losing contact with family. And some people are like, well, then they can just call in whatever. Sometimes people don't have time for that. Sometimes people's best way of communicating with their families is posting those things on there and letting people see. They're not showing off. They're just like, hey, we're still here. Look at what we're doing.
Well, even like, I know it sounds weird, but this lady just popped up on my TikTok not that long ago. And she does 2024 dating for the plot. Oh, I love her. She does like 11 points and stuff like that. But the whole time, like, if you even to think about dating now, and I've chatted about it before. I'm a single Pringle thriving. A lot of people, like, I saw this like post on Facebook of this like random group that I'm in, and they're like, how do people meet people now? And all of the comments were like,
Apps.
no.
Oh.
It was like, the person specifically said, like, I don't want to meet somebody in an app. And it was really funny because I went to the grocery store at 7:20 in the morning. At 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And the number one comment was, go to the grocery store before 8 a.m. And I was like, I feel very called out that I went to the
You're like, this is
and they were like, people who are single and who don't have families and stuff will go to the grocery store before 7 a.m. Before 8 because they usually have to work.
oh.
And so that's where people are meeting. I'm like, man, I went to the grocery store because I needed buns. But like, but like you read like the different comments and like so many people, I always find it really fascinating, like hearing how people met each other. And it's like, I noticed a huge shift in my generation of like not wanting to be online.
Oh, yeah. Those apps look like a fucking nightmare.
I'm sorry, posting your face and having to talk to people over messages consistently.
Yeah.
Nope. I'm sorry.
I mean, doing it to find a job or even like applying for like remote tasks and stuff like that is already a nightmare, and you don't know if it's a scam. I cannot imagine having like all this information about yourself out there.
Oh my God. Also, then people just like,
Also, you have to pay for most of them.
and they just decline you.
Yeah.
It's like, and sometimes people, they'll match and they'll be like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to click it. When it's like,
Oh, God. Just like instead of having those one or two interactions where you get rejected, you're getting rejected by like 40 people a day or something. And you're like, oh my God.
catfishing, so much like that.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, I'm just like, I would just love if everybody was like, one day, like, no. Like, I've had friends who, like, got married. They met through, like, different dating apps and stuff. But I'm just like, I'm good.
Well, and that's the whole thing, right? Like that's not something that works for you. And we've had this discussion several times throughout different episodes. I personally feel like even though it looks like the world is progressing forward, we're always going backwards. And my best result I can say is there is a gentleman who restores retro refrigerators. And there's another person who goes through and showcases like retro kitchens before they've been like fully renovated, pulled apart. And like the reason why we had doors on kitchens is so that way you could close it and not see the mess when you had guests over versus like the open concept that we're all used to. The bins that are like directly above where the sink is, and someone had it where you pull it out, and those bins are for like potatoes and other produce that you would like automatically clean, and they're right there and you can do that. Or in the bathrooms, this is a big thing, is in the bathrooms, they used to have like a little slot in like most vanity mirrors where people would take their razors and dump the razors in there. But the fridges are the biggest thing for me. And you would like take it out eventually, but it was like a whole thing. The fridges are the biggest thing for me because there's so many times where things like get lost in the back of the fridge, or it'll be like, look, you can pull this out, you can do this, or buy this container, or do this. And these fridges that this guy fucking finds, one of them was like in the middle and it was almost like a spiral. So you could turn every single shelf. It was a circle. Or like one where you literally pulled out the shelf, you could load it and then stick it back in. And it wasn't pulling it all the way out. It was still on a hinge. And that hinge could handle all the weight that you're about to put on it. Like it was just, I was like, wow, there are so many things that we have done to make things inefficient in order to make it so you have to purchase another fucking solution in order to fix it.
Yep.
And it's just like, really, guys? And then there's other things that people chronically try to push forward with things too. So I think that's where my big thing is going for is some of these things I'm like, wait, people don't do that. Like I always look at the flyers before I go to the store.
I don't.
I do because it's on an app. Like it is technology, but it is on an app. And then I circle the things and I know the things that my family uses and the things that I may need. And then I go, oh, okay, cool. It's there. And if it's a different price at the first store that I go to, then at least I know I can go to this store to get it at that price.
I only go to the same 2 grocery stores. So I don't look at the flyers, but I am more inclined to like do meal plans and stuff like that. Like anytime Sarah and her kid are staying with us when her husband's away, she knows there's a meal plan.
And there's always something on there. And it's always like, okay, cool. So we'll adapt it to like what your kid will actually eat. And she eats a lot of things. She's just picky about certain things.
Well, majority of the time it's like steak, mashed potatoes, and corn.
Yeah.
Because she loves all of those. Spaghetti she'll usually eat. If there's like tacos, then at least she can have like a quesadilla or something like that. But it's never like, oh, well, we can't have this, or we can't have this, or we can't have this.
Oh, and that's the whole thing is like, there's so many different other ways. And I know people do the no spend because it's not even, I feel like a lot of people try to position as like habit breaking versus like saving money. But like there are other ways that you can spend money, like try not using a debit card. But nowadays that doesn't really work because there's a lot of places that are cashless that don't take anything like that. There's you could try like a no spend week to see or whatever, or be like, okay, like I'm just very open. I'm like, hey guys, rent has been paid. We have bought groceries. We are not buying anything else right now. Okay, everybody good? Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
There is some apps, free apps that you can do that you can like people do envelope.
Yes,
the envelope ones. And there's apps where you can like allot a certain amount for each thing, and it like tells you like at the end of the month it gives you a report of like how much you spent on this or this or this. And like there's certain things like makeup might not be essential to some people, but it is essential to some people's jobs.
Yeah.
They have to wear makeup. Obviously if you don't have like glasses, glass cleaner is not an essential for you. For people who have glasses, it is.
Oh, it's hugely essential.
And like there's various things where it's like you just have to look at your family, your status, your like priorities versus like what thy neighbor is, because thy grass is not always green on the other side.
Or like if a particular influencer annihilates everything out of her closet and narrows it down to a very small amount of things, that does not mean that you need to do the same thing.
No.
Because if you like everything that you have, then why the fuck are you getting rid of it? You've already spent money on it before, and you shouldn't feel guilty about having stuff that you like in general.
Also, most of these influencers live in places that are not the same as Canada.
I'm also going to be totally honest. Most of those influencers didn't pay for the fucking clothes that they have.
Yeah.
They had stuff that was gifted to them, which is great. They had the advantage of having stuff like that gifted to them. And the fact that they're giving that away, the only thing it did was take up space or like mental space for them. And that may be super overwhelming because you'll see ones that get on these PR lists and they're taking all these packages and stuff and they don't want to say no because for years, maybe they waited to be on a PR list.
Yeah.
And they liked that sweater, or maybe they were waiting to see if somebody else needed it, and then they go through it all. Like there are a lot who donate to like shelters and stuff like that, which is great. But sometimes it's like those people didn't actually buy those things, or they bought those things because it worked for them at that moment, and they shouldn't be shitting on themselves for buying something that worked on that they used, maybe even frequently, and then just stopped using one day because they got something else that worked.
I saw a lot of these too of people being like, a lot of influencers will come and be like, what's your favorite this? So that companies will reach out to them.
Oh, okay.
Of like, I'm looking for a really good this. Can you like tell me what your favorites are?
I know there's some people who do that, and then other ones who are like, oh my God, no, seriously, like I need help. I remember one time Jaclyn Hill was like, I've tried every single eyeliner at Ulta and Sephora, and they always bleed on my eyes and blah, blah, blah. And there was like a ton of people. I was one of the people who commented too, and everyone were like, the Maybelline pot eyeliner? Literally, if you use that, wow, that is an aggressive like helicopter noise. If you use that, and sometimes like you would just like, we'd call it like sealing it with like a black eyeshadow, it works really great. Literally to this day, that woman is worth millions of dollars. She still uses the Maybelline pot eyeliner.
Yeah.
So like, if you can find things that work for you, then use them. Like, I have found eyeliners that work really great at Sephora and mascaras if I'm sticking with the makeup trend, but also the Wet n Wild ones and e.l.f. stuff works exactly the same.
Exactly.
Yeah. So get what works for you. Do things that don't make you shit on yourself. I think that's the number one thing to kind of get across when it comes to this trend. And stay as warped and twisted as ever. Peace.
Thank you so much for listening to us on YouTube. You can find us on all of the socials: Instagram, Pinterest,
TikTok,
Facebook,
Snapchat. But if you're more of a like just an audio type person, we're on Spotify podcast, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. I think we're on Pandora, iHeartRadio, and you can also check us out on the RSS feed.
Thank you so much for listening, and feel free to go re-listen to some of the episodes that we have.